So basically, a lot of you guys know of my story about the past 5 years, and some of you may not. Basically, I started singing when I was 4 in church, and I started writing music on my own when I was 11, and that's the same time around when I started playing guitar. I took lessons for like 7 or 8 years, and then I wanted to start a music career. And so I was already used to playing in worship bands at church and stuff. And so I've always dreamed of being on stage and being a performer. And I've always wanted to do that. I still want to do that with the rest of my life. So I got the opportunity in 2014 to go record in Nashville at a little studio called the Silent Planet Studios, and which was run by Brandon Owens. And he basically, me and my buddy, and my longtime buddy Caleb, who still drums for me, we went down to Nashville, or basically up to Nashville. Either way. We went up to Nashville and we recorded 3 songs, which would be my first 3 songs, which would basically define who I am as a musician, and it still does today, because those were the first 3 songs that I would have ever put out there and for anybody to hear me, which was Keep Your Head Up, Wherever You Are, and One Step Closer to Home. And I still play all the 3 of those songs still today at every show because those are my foundation. And I have a tattoo on my back of Wherever You Are because I always want to remember where I'll put a picture right there. Yeah. But anyway, just to always remember where I came from and where I started as a musician. And so anyway, I put that out, and it was very overwhelming because I was 15 years old when it came out.
In the pieces on the ground, the master of our creation.
Before that, we found out that my dad just had gotten diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The summer before that, he was having a lot of problems in his stomach, and he went to several doctors to see what was going on, and they all told him, well, we don't really know, it's hard to tell, could be pancreatitis, could be something wrong with your stomach. So they put him on a lot of medicines and stuff, but no one could ever figure out what was wrong. And so right around that time, I was still just like a little ignorant teenager, so I didn't really care. I did care, but it was just one of those things where like you just feel like everything's gonna be fine, so there's not really a point in worrying about it. And so anyway, I just kept up with the news that my mom gave me because I didn't go to any of the doctor's appointments. Obviously, she did. So anyway, they were like, finally, one last doctor appointment, they were like, you're gonna have to go up to the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota and see what they can do from there because they're like the top doctors in the US. So they took my dad, my Aunt Brenda, my mom, and my grandma all went up to the Mayo Clinic for about 2 weeks. They did a bunch of tests on him, and I had to stay at my buddy Caleb's house for that 2 weeks, which I'm forever grateful for, because me and him have been friends for 8 years now, and we've been playing together for that amount of years, and it's crazy because he's like the longest friend that I've had. And I stayed at their house for 2 weeks, and then they finally came home. They sat us down and they told us that he had stage 4 pancreatic cancer, which at the time I didn't really know how to feel, because I've heard all these stories of people being able to beat cancer and people being able to just not worry about that stuff because God's in control. And I definitely felt that at the time, that like my dad was going to be perfectly fine, because we had such a strong faith in our family that I knew he had a strong faith in God, that God was just going to beat this and that he'd be fine. So anyway, that began a time of the whole pray for Robbie thing, and our church family, our family, our friends, everybody was so supportive. My dad had to go through so much chemo and radiation treatments to try to stop the cancer. And we had a battle of the bands. We had this huge concert. We invited so many youth bands and everything, and our youth band headlined it. And it was just basically a fundraiser for my dad. And all the proceeds went to the National Institute for Pancreatic Cancer, or whatever it's called. And so he got to speak and tell his story to everybody, and it was just an awesome night. And then a couple months later, towards the fall, he had gotten really bad, and so he had to stay at the hospital for like 2 months. And I remember me and my buddies, my buddy Travis, me and my buddy Caleb and Jordan, we stayed the night with my dad a few times, sleeping on the cold hospital floors, but we didn't really care. We just knew that our time with him was probably limited, and that anything would have been fine. I still had hope then that he'd come back and just be better than ever, but it got worse. And then they said there's just nothing they could do, because the cancer was so close to many different very risky areas in his body, where if they try to do surgery, that he could possibly just die from the surgery, because that's how bad it was. So they said there's nothing they could do, because the cancer was just not getting any smaller. And so they sent him on hospice. And if for those who don't know what hospice is basically they take care of him at our home until people pass away. They do it with a lot of older people and people that have this type of cancer, and just anybody who the doctors can't really do anything else for. But the nurses were so nice coming to our house and checking up on my dad. And so many people, I think that was more the overwhelming part, was so many people every single day were coming over and visiting my dad, which was awesome. And I'll be eternally grateful for all those people. It was just super overwhelming. So that was a part of me that I couldn't stay in the house for that long, so I had to just stay away and go hang out with friends, which I regret now, because I wish I spent more time with my dad. But you know, it was just overwhelming for me, because I've never been through anything like that. I've never really lost anybody that close to me. And so then in November, I had woke up that morning, November 7th of 2014, and I had gotten an opportunity to go play lead worship at Woodstock High School's FCA with my buddy Caleb and Jordan. And so I told my dad goodbye and that I loved him. I gave him a hug. And I left for FCA. I played at FCA, and the next weekend after, we were doing a youth retreat at our church. And so I went over to my youth pastor Charles's house to start coordinating the set lists for the worship band that we were doing that weekend. And so basically we were just sitting there, and then Charles gets a call from my mom saying that my dad had passed away. And so I didn't really know what I wanted to do then. Like, I couldn't feel like I could cry. I was just in total shock. Like, I felt so numb everywhere in my body. And basically the whole car ride home, Charles took me over to my dad, and all our family and our close people were just sitting around my dad, all in tears, and everybody was like, Levi, it's okay to cry. And I was just like, I know it's okay to cry, but I don't feel like crying. It was one of those parts where I just didn't know how to feel at the time. So I just kept on, I just went in my room, and me and my buddy Jordan, he was just trying to keep my spirits up because I didn't really know what else to do. So they took him away, and we had his, he wanted a life celebration. He didn't want a funeral. He didn't want anybody dressing in black or anything. So we had it at our church, Hopewell Baptist, at the time, and so many people came, and they filled the whole sanctuary. People were standing in the sanctuary, and people were overflowing in the gym. They had to put projectors on the screens, because that's how many people came to show up for my dad, which was insane to me. Like, how many people were touched by my dad in just a short amount of time, because our life on earth is short. I think a lot of what my dad went through has really taught me that. But I went on stage and I started to talk about my dad, because before he passed away, he gave me this ring, and he said, I can't bend down on one knee, but I wanted to give you this. And so he gave me a ring, had a little cross on it, and inside it said, play for me, I'm always here, Dad. And I don't know what I'd do if I would ever lost that ring, because that's like one of the last things that's the last thing he ever gave me. So it's real important to me. I put it on whenever I have an important anything, important show, job interview, whatever. I put it on a lot in high school when I had important tests, because high school was very stressful. I had to take, when my dad was going through that, I had to take a couple months off of school so I could just be around him, so I wasn't all worried and stressed out about school. So I told my story about the ring as a life celebration, and that's when I actually first cried for my first time since he passed. And anyway, so I sang 2 songs, and then we released balloons that we wrote stuff on him, for him, like whatever we wanted to say to him. And everybody released balloons, and then the days after that, they were hard, because Mom would just stay in her room. I barely saw her, but I wanted to keep my spirits up, and I wanted to be the man of the household, because I felt like that's what I had to do from now on. So I was in high spirits. I didn't let anything bother me, and I was always hanging out with my friends and stuff. And then that's when I started being very insecure about my body, and for some reason around the same time, which was not good, because I started taking it out on my body. Basically, I would make myself throw up anything I've eaten, and so I lost so much weight, and I kept on doing that for at least a year and a half, 2 years. And then I finally told my mom, and she had told me that I needed to go to counseling and a nutritionist so I could get my weight back. And that was probably the hardest 2 years of my life, because it was just I wasn't going through my grief the way I took it out on my body. I shouldn't have. And I realize that now, but now I'm at the point where I'm like 100% healthy again, and I don't do that anymore, thank God. He really got me out of that. And that's about the 2-year mark was when I actually fully let myself go through that grief. And it was a hard year, but it was a year that I really needed. And so every year on my dad's passing, we would go to the place that he really loved. Our close family friends, Jill and Doug, their parents have them and their parents co-own a property down in South Georgia. And my dad loved going there. He loved going there. It was always his go-to destination for just some time off. And we wanted him to be safe down there, and so Jill's dad ended up making a little cabin that we put over his boxes of ashes so they would always be safe, and we always knew that that's where he wanted to be. We called it Robbie's place because every year we go down there and we just spend a bunch of family time together, and we just reflect on my dad and how we love him and just how we miss him, and we always release the balloons, and I always sing, and JC's been, Emma's been, yeah, I think it's just you and Emma, but I've taken a lot of people that I only take people that I really love and really feel close to down there, because it's very sensitive. It's very sensitive for me, and it's very like one of those things where you don't want just anybody going down there. So I feel like the past 5 years have been, this year marks 5 years since my dad passed away, and me releasing this album is just a testament of me finally being able to, you're never going to get over the loss of a parent, I know that, but finally reaching that end point of not feeling like the world is ending anymore. Like, you're fine with who you are right now. And like, I feel like all that I've went through high school, I almost didn't even graduate because just my grades were so bad. But thank God that I really turned myself around, because I really ended up passing, because senior year was the hardest for me because I had a hernia surgery, which it was probably because of me making myself throw up so much. But basically, I had to deal with that at the end of the semester of the second semester of senior year, which was really hard on me because I had to make up all that work and make sure I passed so I could graduate and walk. Luckily I did, and that was just, it was like a breath of fresh air after high school. It was just like, I can finally breathe, everything's gone. Like, they say that high school is the best 4 years of your life. Well, it wasn't for me just because of what I've been through. And I'm just like, finally, I can breathe now. I can just take a year off from school in general, and I can just be me for once. Like, I don't have to worry about anything. And so ever since then, I've had my ups and downs, but I've still always loved music. Music's always been a staple of my life, and I've always written about what I've gone through, because I feel like vulnerability and being honest with your music makes the best songs. And so I always make sure that I never sugarcoat anything, because I want to, make sure that people can hear the truth in these songs and not just think, oh, it's another song. But music has been my therapy through these past 5 years, and whether it be from the start, from wherever you are, to right now, it's somewhere in between. These past 5 years have really shaped me into the man I am today, and I don't think I would be who I am today without the help of God, my dad, my family, my friends, just everybody who's helped me keep on going down this path. And so thank you guys for your love and support for these past 5 years. I am just blown away by how many people have listened to my music in such a short time, and I know I'm not anywhere I need to be, but I'm gonna keep making sure that my music keeps growing and growing, and I hope that you guys just keep listening and just keep waiting for what's next, because there's a lot coming next, and I'm so thankful for you guys. And so that's my story, and my name is Levi Ransom, and I love you guys. Best friends forever, best friends forever, ring.
Softly.
Gently.
Sweetly.
Discreetly. are wrapping.